Man, I was listening to a podcast and it really made me think. This dude named Lex Friedman. And his guest was mentioning all these different philosophers, and I was Googling them as I usually do. And they all seem to be of one persuasion. We'll have to get into it. But what they definitely didn't look like was anyone I grew up with. They didn't look like anyone in my family. They didn't look like anyone from the island that my family's from. And ain't none of them look like me. And then I asked myself, why is it that if someone asked me to name 3 black philosophers, I couldn't name one? And then I thought, based on my life as a black man, as a millennial, I asked myself, have I ever even had the time to hold the task of thinking multidimensionally with 2 hands? That's not to say I don't do it. It's just to say, when I do it, I'm usually doing it on the train, or I'm doing it at 5 in the morning when everything else is done, or I'm doing it in my dreams, or I'm doing it while I paint. I'm doing it on all this time that I always have to create for myself, right? That is to say, the same way that there's time for school or work or belief practice, whatever yours may be, there isn't any kind of equivalent time, societally, where you are expected to shut the fuck up, sit the fuck down, and think or meditate. That's not to say people don't do it. It's to say society doesn't carve out time for you to do it, especially if you're black. And then I thought, wow, with all the stress that black people go through on a daily basis for a myriad of reasons, with all the time no one has of any creed or color or denomination, particularly black people, with all the resources necessary to be established as a philosopher, I would imagine necessary to become a philosopher. I wouldn't know, again, of course, because of the reason why I'm making this video. Black people don't have those kind of resources. So there were so many times as a kid growing up in Queens where I would see something that fascinated me. And it might have been from a book. It might have been a caterpillar. It might have been something I seen on the train. It might have been something I seen on the bus, because it is Queens. It might be something from culture, from Jamaican culture, Trini culture, Puerto Rican culture, anything I grew up around. And it would fascinate me, and I would have no one to talk about it with. No one in my family, none of my friends, none of my peers, my classmates, nobody. Motherfuckers would just look at me like, you could have been thinking about anything. You could have been thinking about basketball. You could have been thinking about a freestyle. And you asking me about stars? The fuck you talk like I'm 11. Nigga, this is Hollis. What are we talking? This is Queen. What are you doing? This is we talk about novas and shit. Nigga, pass the ball. What are you talking about? And I'd imagine that experience is similar to the experience of a lot of black people, particularly black boys. And I just wonder what black people can do, among said things potentially being philosophy, if more consistently our general needs were met. We didn't go through the things on a daily basis that stress us out, that may or not be related to our nature. And if we understood the value of these kind of things, is there a democracy without Plato or Socrates? I don't know the answer to these questions. These are just coming off the top of my head. Do you get Nike without Genghis Khan? Do you get Yeezys without Jordan? All of these things, they sound random, but they have everything to do with culture. Everything to do with culture. Everything to do with culture. Does the art direction for BuzzFeed look the same if season 2 of Timon and Pumbaa wasn't art directed the way it was? Does BuzzFeed's art direction and website and landing page look the same if Hey Arnold looked different? All of these things, as random as they seem to be, are interconnected. And the only way to recognize those things is when we dedicate time and resources to observing these things and trusting that the most brilliant minds of our society, when supported and assisted, and when things are taken out of their way, can contribute something to human society that all of us can use that makes all of our lives better and easier and more enjoyable and lighter. I think the reason you don't see a whole lot of black philosophers is because black people flat out don't have time for that shit. And it could contribute to a lot of solutions. I suppose the takeaway from this video at the end of it, if anything, is what happens if we do find ourselves in a situation to produce, support, patronize, uplift, and share philosophy from a black perspective? How does that benefit the world? How does that benefit black people? How does it benefit culture? And therefore you out there in social media land? Because as anyone who is an avid observer of culture knows, anything we do, anything that culture is, somehow, some way finds itself on platforms via social media or on social media platforms. And, you know, that's not a coincidence. So, and who else within culture, within society, has a better vantage point on culture than people of color, black people? Combine that vantage point with philosophy, or the means, resources, time, and lack of stress necessary to render a philosophy. Whole lot of words. I'm just saying. It was just something I was thinking about. That's all. Anyway, thanks.